Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Mike, thanks for the introduction. So I'm sure you guys already know that we're going to be talking about the ripple effect, which is the concept that what you're doing to care for yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, etc., is directly creating an impact on your life and who you are as a person, how you're showing up in your work, how you're showing up in your family, all sorts of things like that. So the premise here is all about self-care, essentially. And so I want you guys to take a moment before we dive in, and I want you to think about how you're presently feeling in life right now on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I'm really stressed, I'm having a very difficult time, and 10 being I'm feeling really, really good mentally, emotionally, everything's fantastic. And once you find that number, go ahead and post it in the chat, and then Mike's gonna let us know where you guys are at currently. We'll be doing this again at the end of the talk to see if anything shifted or changed for you with the resources I'm going to provide you today.
Awesome. So we have a few 7s, 8s, 6, 10. Yeah, more 8s.
All right. So we're pretty high on the scale, which is great. Sometimes with some of the resources and tools I'll be sharing with you, sometimes if you're having a hard time or you're feeling really stressed or really overwhelmed or really frustrated or whatever it is that's causing you to feel a certain way in your life, let's say you're at a 5, you can utilize these tools to then maybe go up to a 7 and then maybe use another tool to bring yourself up to a 10. So our goal for you today is to bring you either closer to the 10 or right at that 10 before we're leaving today. So I want you all to think about when the last time was that you did something to really care for yourself. This could be something like a vacation you took, a massage you got, an hour you took away from the family to read a book or to take a hot bath or whatever it is you do to care for yourself. And hopefully you all know how to use the raise hand function. It's under the reactions tab if you're on desktop. If you're on mobile, I think there's a spot that says more and you should be able to raise hand there. And I would love for you all, if you've done something to care for yourself at all over the last year, to raise your hand, whether that again is a vacation or a massage or anything. Okay, lots of hands are going up. I'm going to give you guys a second to find that function if you're still working on that. All right. So almost everybody has done something to give themselves care, to support themselves over the last year. Now, I want you to keep your hand raised if you've done something in the last 6 months, but if it's been longer than 6 months, go ahead and put your hand down. All right, so a lot of our hands are still raised. A couple did go down though. All right, now I want you to think on a little shorter time frame. I want you to think about the last 3 months. Was there anything you did for yourself to care for yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically over the last 3 months? And it looks like a lot of us still have hands up, which is fantastic. All right, what about in the last month, the last 30 days? Since the start of 2022, done something to really take care of yourself and support yourself? All right, quite a few hands are still up. This is great. What about the last week? What about over the last week, from Sunday all the way to today, which is Thursday, done something to really care for yourself and support yourself? All right, hands are going down more rapidly now. Now, I want you to keep your hand up if and only if you've done something today. Today, Thursday, February 3rd, 2022, if you have done something today to care for yourself mentally, emotionally, energetically, physically, or spiritually. And our hands have gone dramatically down. We went from having almost everybody with hands up to having hands now down. We're going to talk about how this is really, really important. We're so busy in our lives, right? If you have hands raised, you can go ahead and put them down now. We're so busy in our lives with work and with families and with extracurriculars and all sorts of things going on that it sometimes feels very challenging to be able to give ourselves the care that we need. And the care that we give ourselves doesn't always have to be that week-long vacation or that hour massage practice or that hour yoga practice. It can be the very simple and little things that you're doing for yourself every single day. It can be the 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up that rather than picking up your phone and checking the emails and the news and social media, maybe you take a couple of moments just to take a few deep breaths and get acquainted with the day. Maybe this is something like self-care can be all sorts of things. It's not just these big actions that we take, but it can be little things too. Like when something doesn't feel good for you, if somebody asks you to do something, some sort of commitment or a volunteer project or something that your time or energy won't allow you to do, saying, no, thanks. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not going to be able to do that right now. So there's lots of different ways that we start to take care of ourselves. But I want you to start to think specifically about your mornings, because our mornings are a very important time of day. The way that we start our mornings directly impacts how we feel throughout our entire day. So for example, if you are starting your day, waking up, a little bit earlier than you normally do, and you're putting your phone away, taking a couple of deep breaths, maybe starting with that hot cup of coffee that you really enjoy, or with a movement practice that you really like, whether that's going to the gym or running or whatever feels good for you. I want you to think about those types of mornings, the days where it's slow, the days you feel really taken care of physically, mentally, emotionally, etc., and how your day pans out from there. If the whole day seems to go smooth, if things go wrong, but maybe you're not reacting to them as big, just kind of get an idea what that looks like for you. And then I want you to start to think about the days where everything seems to go wrong in the morning. You wake up late, you slept through your alarm, you lost your car keys, you stub your toe on the coffee table, you spill your coffee down your outfit, all sorts of things are going on. What your day looks like from there. Those are the days that tend to be more chaotic, more frustrating, more overwhelming, and things of that nature. So our morning is a very sacred time, because when you go to sleep at night, everything from the day before kind of resets. This is where our energy resets. We have a lot more mental clarity in the morning than at night when we're trying to fall asleep sometimes. So it's a really optimal time to be pausing and doing things that really fill your cup. We've all heard this, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. Well, this is that exact same concept. Like, you can't go into your family and be the best partner or the best mother or father or brother or sister or whatever it is if you're feeling depleted and stressed and burnt out and overwhelmed. Same thing in your work. You can't go into your work and do the best level of your work when you're not feeling the best. Think about a time in your life when you were going through something really challenging. Maybe that was an illness or loss or just overwhelming things, maybe something financial, or maybe something in the last 2 years. There's been a lot of overwhelm and stress in the last 2 years. And think about how much mental clarity and motivation and inspiration you had in your work during that time period versus during the time period where you're really well taken care of and you're really nourished. It's much different. And so this is where the concept of the ripple effect starts to come in, is that everything in your life directly revolves around you, whether it's your family or your health or your career or your passions or your purpose or whatever it is. The one common denominator in every single area of your life is you. And so if you are not well within yourself, it's impossible for any one of these areas to be well and thriving. And that's where the ripple effect comes in. So we were just talking about in the mornings how when you're setting yourself up for success, that ripples out into your day, the way you're interacting with people, the type of work that you're doing, how much inspiration and motivation you have, how much action you're able to take on the things that you truly desire to do, that ripples outward. And that doesn't just stop at today, because how we feel today and how we're taking action today ultimately impacts what happens tomorrow. right? So if there's things that, let's say it's like building a house, if you really want, the walls and the roof on, you got to build that foundation first. But if you're not building the foundation today, it'll be impossible to put the walls up tomorrow. So that's kind of how it is as far as setting ourselves up for success in being the greatest version of ourselves and in creating the greatest version of our lives. Part 2 of the ripple effect is very fun, I think, to think about. It's the concept that everywhere you go, you are leaving some sort of impact, and that impact travels far and wide. I want you to think about if you go out in the world today and you interact with just 5 people. If that interaction is a really positive interaction and you lift their spirits and you spread positivity and you spread love and you spread joy, and those people start to feel that, and they go out into their lives and then interact with 5 more people, suddenly your impact has gone not just on the care you've given to yourself and how good you're feeling, but how good you've spread that to 5 people in your life who have then spread that to 5 more people. And this is also goes on the opposite side of the spectrum. I'm sure you've had a time in your life where you've interacted with someone who is really rude or mean or negative, and it just kind of sours your mood and it just kind of ruins the day. And then from there, you're in a bad mood and you might do something or say something that you're not really happy about. And so it ripples in both ways. Sometimes our ripple is very powerful and positive, and sometimes it's not the ripple we're designed or desire to create. And so this is where the care we give ourselves is so important, because when somebody says something rude to you, or you are having a rough morning, or you did get stuck in line at the bank, or you are running late for that meeting, rather than letting it spoil your entire mood and spoil your day and then spreading that, these are going to be tools that you can use to come back to center, to be more grounded, to feel happier, healthier, more joyful, abundant, etc., so that you can create that same feeling in every area of your life and ripple that out to the people in your life who can then ripple that outward. It's strange to kind of think about, but on a massive scale, we have the ability to impact people for years or decades longer than we ever could have imagined, and more people than we'll ever imagine reaching. A specific example from my life of this is that, as Mike said, I was a former yoga teacher. I had a studio for 4 years, and I went to a yoga teacher training program in Florida, and there was 10 other people in my class, and the instructors taught numerous classes before then, after then, has probably instructed hundreds, if not thousands of students. And there was something that she would say in her practice. If you've ever taken yoga, if you do a sun salutation, you go from upward facing dog to downward facing dog. And she would always say, ride the wave of change. So when I came to Rome, New York, all the way back from Florida and opened my studio, that was something I used to say in my practice, ride the wave of change. Then I started hosting instructor trainings, and I was teaching people how to teach yoga. And just last week, I was at a class of one of the girls I taught yoga to. And in upward facing dog to downward facing dog, she says, ride the wave of change. Now, Jolie, who was my instructor in Florida, and Katie, who was my student here, have never met, and they probably never will meet. I mean, we live in a world of infinite possibilities, so maybe, but the chances are they never will meet. They'll never take yoga together. They'll never leave a lasting impact on each other. But Jolie was able to impact me, and I was able to leave this impact on Katie, who is now impacting her students in her class. Jolie has made the same impact on hundreds of other students who have gone out to make even bigger impacts. So this one individual has made a ripple effect out from herself as an individual across state lines and probably countries that she never could have imagined. And this doesn't have to be in a massive scale of something like a yoga teacher training. This can be things very simple of the people that you're helping throughout your life and throughout your day. Maybe someone you bump into at the grocery store, or a coworker you notice is having a rough time. There's lots of ways that this shows up, and lots of opportunities that we have to spread positivity, to spread those good feelings, and to really lift up not just ourselves, but the people around us. So with that being said, we are going to dive into some of our more our activities now, so that you guys have some tools, so that when stuff starts to come into your life and it starts to feel frustrating, or it starts to feel stressful, or it starts to feel overwhelming, that you have some tools and resources to bring yourself back to center, so you can still be that best version of yourself and still create that massive ripple effect. The first thing we're going to be doing is breath work. If you've ever done yoga, you've probably done breath work before, although it's becoming more and more popular outside of the yoga practice too, with, breath work workshops popping up virtually and in person all over the place. The great thing about breath work is that not only does it give us a space to take our minds to, so that we are shifting our mental focus, but it also creates a sense of regulation within the body. The reason that this is so important is because the body and the mind are so deeply interconnected. When you are really stressed and you have that tension in your shoulders and in your neck and that pain, that's all stress being stored in the body. When something happens and you get that nauseous feeling, that's emotion manifesting in the body. There's a ton of ways that our mental and emotional stuff gets stuck in our bodies and can cause long-term negative effects if we're not taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally. And this is the principle that I learned in health psychology at SUNY Poly. So big shout out to SUNY Poly for setting this foundation. So I want you to think about, when you have something like anxiety, how do you know that you're anxious? It can come up as like a fluttering in the chest, maybe a tightness in the throat, maybe a pit in the stomach. When you're excited, what does that feel like? Maybe that's a lightness, maybe still that beating in the chest, because anxiety and excitement can feel very similar. What about when you're angry? You can feel your cheeks get red and you can feel the tension in your body. So there's a lot of ways that our emotions show up in our physical body. Because of this, breathwork is an excellent tool because it calms the central nervous system, where all of these emotions are being created, and it helps us refocus the mind. So both from a mental perspective and from a physical perspective, breathwork is a great way to recenter and bring ourselves back. Now, when we're born, we are designed to breathe deep into our lungs, filling up our belly, our ribs, and our chest, and then breathing out in that same pattern. But as we're experiencing a lot of this stress, frustration, anxiety, overwhelm, etc., our breath becomes very short and shallow and ends up only coming from our chest. What happens here from a physiological perspective is it's a form of hyperventilation, which throws our central nervous system off and brings us into that state of fight or flight, which is also known as anxiety. So there's a lot going on underneath the surface. So we've been kind of conditioned to abandon these ways of being, these ways of breathing, these ways of thinking for our norm. And in doing that, we're setting ourselves up for failure mentally and physically. So I'm going to start to teach you guys how to deepen the breath and use the full capacity of your lungs again, if this is not something you're accustomed to doing, so that you can find that calm and centered, balanced state between mind and body. So to do this, you're going to take one of your hands, it doesn't matter which one, and you're just going to bring it onto your stomach. And what you're going to do is you're going to work on breathing, so that when you breathe so deep in, your belly is pressing against your hand. And then as you exhale, same thing, just let the belly release back towards your spine. And take a couple of rounds of breath just like that. Notice if this feels a little awkward or uncomfortable for you, that's totally okay. Or maybe it feels normal, maybe it feels really good. And then with that one hand still on your belly, we're going to utilize the other hand now, and you're going to put it on your rib cage, on the outer portion of your rib cage. Now, as you breathe in, you're going to focus on expanding your belly and your ribs. Belly first, then the ribs. Take this at your own pace, inhaling as you need to, exhaling as you need to. And again, notice what this feels like for you. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable or awkward. Maybe you're already starting to feel more calm and centered. And then when you're ready, we're going to add the third part of this breath in. The hand on your belly is going to stay there. The hand from your rib cage is going to come up to your chest now. Now we're going to be working on using the full capacity of our lungs, breathing into the stomach, into the rib cage, and all the way up into your chest. And once that starts to feel a little more comfortable, a little more normal, you can release your hands and continue that same breathing pattern for just a couple of moments. And then once you're ready, you can stop putting effort into the breath, let it go back to its natural pattern of breathing. And just notice how it feels in your body. Notice how you feel mentally and emotionally. Hopefully you feel really calm and relaxed. Breathwork is a great tool because one, this is just one type of breathwork. This is the most simple and basic form of breathwork, but there are infinite numbers of breathwork. There's breathwork that's going to help you fall asleep. There's breathwork that can help give you energy. There's breathwork that can warm you up when you're cold, all sorts of things, because we are creating those shifts mentally and physically within the body. So there's breathwork for all sorts of things. So it's very versatile. Another great thing about breathwork is that it's very discreet, so you can do it anytime and anywhere. For someone that goes to an hour-long yoga practice a couple times a week, it can be hard if you're starting your workday and you're feeling frustrated and stressed or overwhelmed to roll out your mat for an hour and just do some yoga real quick. But the breath is always accessible. It's always available to us. It's something you can do in the middle of a work meeting. If you're starting to feel a little overwhelmed, you can take a couple of deep breaths. Our body naturally likes to breathe deep. If you've ever seen someone who's really stressed, take a deep breath and kind of sigh, it's body trying to regulate itself. We can make that a more conscious process. The next tool we're going to be talking about is words of affirmation. The reason that words of affirmation are such a powerful and effective tool, just like breathwork, is because they're effective and useful anytime and anywhere. You can be sitting in line at the bank, feeling really frustrated that you're running late, and start to focus on the breathwork or the affirmations. You can be in line at the grocery store. You can be in a work meeting. You can be at the dinner table at holidays when your in-laws are there. You can use it anytime, anywhere. So affirmations is a couple of tips that I like to give people for starting custom affirmations. One, you always want to focus on what it is that you desire. So if stress is something you're looking on releasing, rather than saying something like, I am stress-free, which keeps reiterating the stress in your mind, you'd want to say something like, I am at peace, or peace begins with me. Because when we say I'm stress-free, the brain continues to think about the stress. If I say to you, don't think about a blue tree, the first thing that comes to your mind is a blue tree. So the mind can be tricky like that. So you always want to focus on what it is that you actually want and state it as if it's already true. So rather than I'm looking for peace, I'm seeking for peace, I wish I was peaceful, I am at peace. And then when it comes to using your affirmations, there's tons of different ways to use your affirmations. I like to set alarms on my phone that send me affirmations throughout the day. If you have a nice desk at work, maybe you want to write on some Post-it notes and put those on your desk so you're reminded of them throughout your day. You can also put Post-it notes in your car or on your bathroom mirror or wherever you feel like they're going to be powerful and effective and useful for you. But there is one specific trick that I like to teach people, which is, again, stems from yoga, specifically the branch of yoga called Kundalini. And this is both a mantra and a mudra. Mantra meaning word of affirmation, and mudra just meaning hand placement. And so what you do for this is you bring the thumb and index finger together, and then the middle finger, the ring finger, and then the pinky finger. And for each finger, there is a word that's associated with it that forms a full mantra, and that is peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. If you haven't joined in, go ahead and start doing that. Connecting thumb and index finger. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. One more time together. Peace begins with me. The great thing about bringing this word of affirmation in with some physical movements is that a lot of times the things that are going on in our mind that are causing us the stress, the frustration, the anxiety, etc., have been being programmed into our minds for an extended period of time. From a neuroscience perspective, what's happening is we have these different synapses in the brain, and they send information from one synapse to the other synapse, and this is how we have thoughts. And so what happens is the more that two synapses work together, the stronger and the faster they become. So if you have a lot of negative thinking about yourself or about your career or about something else that's going on in your life, these synapses are going to become really strong. They're going to wire together and fire together. And what happens is when we have thoughts, they create how we feel. And the quality of emotions that we feel directly relates to the quality of life that we're living. If you're having a lot of positive thoughts and a positive mindset, and it's making you feel really positive things like joy, abundance, gratitude, then that's directly impacting the quality of your life. Versus if you're having a lot of negative thoughts that are causing you to feel negatively, then you have more of a negative life. From another perspective too, the thoughts are creating the emotions, but the emotions are also determining the type of actions we're taking in our life. So if you're feeling really good and really energized and really grateful, it's very easy to do things that you need to do to take care of yourself, whether that's going to the gym or, doing this project that you're really passionate about or whatever it is, versus all of those forms of self-sabotage that we tend to fall into. So these words of affirmation start to get us thinking differently. And in thinking differently, we feel different, and feeling different, we show up in the world very differently and start to create that ripple effect outwards. The great thing about the peace begins with me mantra is that the hand placements will start to get associated with the feeling of peace. You're literally training new neurons and new neural pathways in your brain to associate this movement with peace. So you can be sitting somewhere and with your hands under the table, start to do this finger movement to initiate a state of peace in your body without even having to do the mantra. Of course, that comes with a lot of practice. Don't assume that tonight you can sit at the dinner table and do this, because it's not going to work that way. It's going to come with some practice. You're going to have to train your brain to associate this movement with the feeling of peace. The very last tool I'm going to give to you guys today is something called EFT tapping. I'm sure you guys have heard of yoga, breathwork, meditation, journaling, affirmations, etc. before. EFT tapping is something that's a little bit newer and is now on the rise that you're probably unfamiliar with, but it's been one of the most powerful and effective tools that I've personally used in my life, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing it with other people now, because it really creates a big change. So again, thinking about those neural pathways that we were just talking about, thinking about the way that our brain is wiring together. We have something like 12 to 60,000 thoughts every single day, which is a lot of thoughts. And science shows that you will have 90% of the same thoughts today as you did yesterday and again tomorrow, which means that these cycles and these thought patterns are on repeat all day, every day, sometimes from even decades ago, sometimes from the first grade. I've worked with tons of people who have had memories come up about, in my parent teacher conference in the first grade, my teacher said I was incapable of succeeding. And now as an adult, I've been playing the story of being incapable. And this comes up in a lot of different ways. So what the tapping does along with the talking is it helps to put a break in those patterns and in those loops and in those thoughts, so that we can then, once the break happens, we can start to rewire the brain in another direction, in a more positive direction for what it is we actually want to think, believe, feel, etc. So for tapping, there are main points on the body, starting with the crown of the head, the space above the eyebrows, the side of the eye, not where the temple is, but where this little bonier part is. Then underneath the eye, the space under your nose, the space right here under your mouth, on the collarbone, and then at the rib cage. You can tap with one hand, two hands, you can tap with just two fingers, all four fingers. It really doesn't matter as long as you're doing the tapping as you're doing the talking. There have been recent studies that have shown that tapping can be more effective in making forward progress than CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because there's two things that really wire things into our minds. The first is repetition, and the second is strong emotion. So the more you're thinking about something or talking about it, and the stronger the emotion is around it, the more your brain is going to hold on to it and keep that record, essentially. And then when we're doing things like tapping, what we're doing is we're putting a break in those old patternings, and we're starting to release that repetition that we've done for so long to then create our new thoughts and beliefs. So I'm going to guide you through a quick thing of tapping. We're just going to do 3 rounds, and I'm going to do it specifically on the thought of like stress and anxiety and that type of thing. It's very general. You can use this for anything. You can use this for when you're feeling really tired and you wish you had more energy. You can use this when you're having trouble falling asleep and your monkey mind is driving you wild. There's lots of different applications. Once you start to learn how to do it, you can talk yourself through it on your own, but this will just be a sample. And then I'll give you a quick and easy way to implement this, like the other 2 techniques, in everyday life. So we're going to start by tapping on the crown of the head. And as you do this, you're just going to repeat after me. You can say it out loud or in your head. All the stress and anxiety. It's showing up in my body. It's affecting my mind. It's stopping me from being the best version of myself. And it's stopping me from showing up in my life in the best way. The stress and anxiety affects my work and my relationships. And I feel so frustrated when I'm not feeling good. Sometimes it feels like things might not ever get better. It feels like I might just be in the stress and anxiety forever. And that thought makes me even more frustrated and overwhelmed. But right now I'm in this awesome workshop. Bianca's teaching me this fun and effective tool. And I've learned some other tools today too, that I know I'll be able to use in my everyday life. I can breathe through the stress and anxiety. I can tap through the stress and anxiety. I can use my positive affirmations to shift my mindset, to shift the way that I'm feeling, to shift the way that I'm showing up in the world, and to create that positive ripple effect. I'm feeling better already. Better and better, the best is yet to come. Go ahead, squeeze one of your wrists, take a nice deep breath in, and gently blow it out. If you've never done tapping before, that was probably a strange and interesting experience, and you're probably like, why are we doing this? This is a little bit strange. What is this lady talking about? But the more you practice it, the better it'll feel and the more effective it'll be for you. And again, you can use this for all sorts of different things. But that's a more in-depth version of it, where you would have to either do it in some sort of private space. You're not gonna be able to do that in a work meeting or do that at the dinner table or whatever. So there's a little point that you can use on your hand called the Gamut Point. It's between your pinky and your ring finger, and it's a little soft spot here. And basically it's just as effective by tapping this one little spot. You can do it very discreetly underneath the table. Before we came on our call today and Mike and I were waiting for everybody to come in, I was tapping under the table. He had no idea. And you can just talk yourself through things in the same way. Maybe, just maybe, this is going to be the best talk of my life. Maybe I'm going to help so many people here today. Maybe I can be calm going into this talk. You can use that for anything. You know, you can tap if you're in an argument with somebody, maybe it's okay to let this go. Maybe I'm opening myself up to see a different perspective, and maybe better communication in my relationship as a result, and whatever it is. And it's funny because I do this so often that one day I was at the mall over the holidays and I was tapping, and my boyfriend looked at me and he was like, "Are you upset at me? Did I say something to make you upset?" I was like, "No, not at all. This is totally unrelated." But it's, you know, I'm walking through the mall, tapping on my hand. It's pretty discreet. I'm sure nobody else noticed it. He does because, you know, we do these things together. But for me, it was a way to, I was feeling kind of anxious and overwhelmed, and it was a way to work through that and to start to feel better, and then to go about my day in that way. So I hope that these tools have been helpful for you. I hope that they have inspired you to give yourself the care that you need, even if it's just 5 minutes. These were very quick tools. The breath work is effective in as little as 3 to 5 minutes. The affirmations, you know, however long you need to use them, the tapping can be effective pretty quickly and easily. So even if you have to excuse yourself from a space and go into the bathroom and close the door and tap for a second, or breathe for a second, or use your affirmations, they're very quick, they're very easy, they're very effective in ways that you can start to self-regulate, feel better mentally, emotionally, energetically, and to start to spread that out into every area of your life and into every person you come into contact with. So take a moment, tune in, notice how you're feeling on that scale of 1 to 10. And let us know in the chat if anything's changed for you. Maybe you're feeling a little more calm, more optimistic, more positive, more excited. Maybe I just overwhelmed you with so much information. Whatever you're feeling is great. You know, you're going to get the replay. You can go back and watch it again. But just let us know where you're feeling, where on that scale you are now.
I'll just wait a minute here. We got a few 9s, 8, an improvement, a few 10s.
I'm so happy to hear that. We were pretty high on the scale, so you guys set the bar really high for me. Like when you're at an 8, sometimes it's hard to get up a little bit higher. So I'm grateful to hear there's been any improvement with you at all. And I want you all to take a moment to recognize how proud you should be of yourself for showing up to this. There's a lot of people who are going to be like, "Oh, self-care, I don't really need that. Oh, I'm fine. You know, oh, I can just push through this last work project or this last family commitment, and you know, everything's fine." You know, to take this time, it's been 40 minutes that we've been together so far today, to take 40 minutes out of your day to show up for something like this, to give yourself a new foundation mentally, emotionally, physically, is incredible. And you should be very proud of yourself for taking that time and for doing this for yourself, because so many people don't. But you now have the opportunity to notice how you're making an impact on the world, and how big of a catalyst you can be for great change. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Bianca. And for our sports fans, we definitely needed you for that Buffaloes-Bill game a few weeks ago. So still a little sore subject for New Yorkers right now, but we definitely needed those techniques prior.
Well, next season, when the Bills are playing, you can just start tapping, and then you don't have to get in a fight with your wife, and you know, you don't have to kick the dog because you're so upset. You know, you can start to create that positive ripple. If there is anybody that has questions about any of the resources we've talked about, or any of the information that I shared, now would be a really great time to leave that in the chat, and I can hopefully answer some of those for you. I would be honored to share that. So literally everything. It was in health psychology my senior year with Dr. Joe, who introduced me to the concept of the mind, body, spirit connection. And as I was like looking at myself, I was like, wow, I fail in every category. What next? And so that's when I was like, I need to do something to take care of myself. I can't keep being this miserable. I can't keep being this stressed. I can't keep being this anxious, overwhelmed, etc. And so that's when I started taking yoga classes, and then immediately following graduation, went to yoga school, opened the yoga studio, came into all of this work. Also during my time there, I met our host here, Mike. We were in school at the same time together. We started Poly at the same time together. Mike and I actually had a talk show together. So he was just priming me to give these talks. You know, who knew it would be, you know, almost 10 years later, but Poly was very much the foundation to everything that I do now, in a number of different ways, whether from the faculty that made lasting impact on me, to the classes, to the information I learned, to my classmates. There's no doubt in my mind that had I not attended Poly and not taken a degree in psychology and not been there during that specific time in my life, that I wouldn't be in the same place right now, not just in this Poly talk, but at the same place in my life and in my career. So it almost all goes back to Poly. So my website is just my name, biancamjohnson.com. And with that, I share a lot of stuff on social media, whether that's, you know, I just did a tapping video on social media the other day. So that's a great space to follow to get free resources. I do have a podcast that's available on my website as well, where I talk about all sorts of different things as far as shifting your mindset, or, you know, how you're feeling mentally, emotionally. I dive a lot deeper into the spiritual component in the podcast too, if you're interested in any of that. And then I do offer retreats. So maybe if you're wanting to fly to Sedona, Arizona and do some yoga by the Red Rocks and learn more self-development tools and more self-regulation tools, there's space to do that. I offer one-on-one work, and I'm just starting in the process, just launched actually 2 days ago, a monthly membership where I'm going to be doing like monthly workshops similar to this and even more expansive. And then healing circles every month, where we're going to be meditating and tapping and working through a lot of different stress and anxieties and all sorts of things, whether that's around relationships or money or your life purpose or whatever it is. So all of it's on my website though. That's the best way to find everything that's available.